Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are in this beautiful world that we share together. Welcome to the 100 Connected podcast. On this very special episode, it is just us, the Connection Committee, as we take a moment to reflect on what we have learned over the 1 year. It's been just about 1 year since we recorded our first episode and 2 seasons of making this podcast today. My name is Alex Shapiro. I have been representing 100 this whole time, and it's my pleasure to continue to do so. And I'm calling, of course, from Helsinki in Finland. Today, I'm so pleased to be joined by Annette de Graaf of the Flow Approach, calling from Norway. Hi, Annette.
Hello.
As well as Cheryl Druppers of Cheza Cheza, calling from Kenya. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, everyone.
From South Africa and Buzz Kids, we have Hanukkah Maki. Hi, Hanukkah.
How's it?
And from a very sleepy Hope, Maine and Sweet Tree Arts, we have Lindsay Stewart. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning.
So I think it's such a special moment to come together and think about what a pleasure it's been for us to gather almost every week with each of you and for us to invite guests from across the education world so that we can learn more together, both about ourselves, about each other, and about what education means more generally. And when you all first approached me with this dream of continuing our conversations from the 100 Summit in Helsinki a year ago, it was a hope that we would get to do something like this. That was the original goal of the podcast, as I understood it. But I want to ask each of you, how has this year changed what the podcast has meant for you? What has this process been? And maybe we can just speak in whatever order feels right. Does anybody want to start out? And I will edit this out so we don't have to think about it. So go ahead if anybody would like to share.
I recall when we spoke about it first, I was already on my summer holidays in South Africa and I was in a beautiful location looking out over the sea. And we threw it together a Zoom call and we said that we wanted to do this thing. And I remember maybe I was just rushing to get down to the beach and I kept saying, let's just fail forward, let's just do it. And I think if I'm honest, I didn't even begin to envisage the type of success, reach, longevity, professionalism, polished, beautiful product that we now sit with. And I just want to congratulate us all for that just bravery, because I do think that willingness to just get going and trust that the road will appear and just taking the first step was so important, that we trusted each other and the connection we made enough in person to then have one or two chats, to then decide on this thing, to then go, we have this idea for a podcast, and to then just do it. I think often in life, people and human beings, we want to have a perfect plan before we start something. And what I've learned is with this project and in everything else in life, sometimes just start walking.
I like
Okay,
that,
well,
Hanukkah, because when you said just do it, I wrote down the word scared because I thought, I've never done a podcast. What am I bringing to the table? How are we going to do this? And what will it evolve into? And actually, because we just did it and because there's trust and we just really love education, I think those were the building blocks and the foundation just to get going. And a year ago, I also didn't have a big plan and thought this is what it's going to be like, but it has brought so much joy and connection to you all, but also the educators and the innovators that we talk to, that it's something that I couldn't have imagined possible what it gave to me. And I hope people listening also, take something away from that as well. They feel that.
okay, I'm hopping in because you all know the reason we actually are here, which goes right back to the karaoke bar. And I really think it's important to state that. Summit, yeah, Alex, if we could roll a little clip of you, that would be fantastic.
That footage is lost. No one knows where.
Hiccups.
There were a bunch of us there, I've got to say, but something about, obviously, we all know, guess what? There's research about singing together and karaoke and how that bonds people. But I think that was the start of our, all right, we can do fun stuff together and brave things together. I also just want to say, yeah, how dare you've all become to me, of course. And that sort of was, that began with just very vulnerable conversations that we were willing to have together about the thing we're most passionate about, which is education, and sharing that and then hopefully opening that up for others to connect with us was really, really important. And I've seen that happen. It's really kind of remarkable to imagine something and then put it into action. So,
I would
Annetta.
like to say something about the power of magnets. It just feels like we were magnets towards each other. We were like, I don't know, we could not be together. Whenever we were in the same room and we barely knew each other, we were like pulled towards each other. That is like, I think so magically, like a magical thing that happened, and that maybe is evidence of how you should trust magnetism and just follow that. When something is like curiosity towards other people, curiosity towards other worlds, other visions, other perspectives, I feel like that is drawing us together, pulling us together. And the power of our magnetism together is also out there in the world. So we're pulling others in too. And wow, yeah, that is just magic to me.
You know,
But I
I have
also
to think about drawing these together. And at least from my perspective, this has been an exercise in everything that each of you had said, right? Hanneke talking about the failing forward, just getting started. Sharella about the embracing the fear. Z about the idea that when we are together, we can do hard things and we can build something joyful. And then Netta of like just trusting the fact that things can come together. The fact that this has synergized in these kinds of ways and has also allowed us to each bring our own perspectives into these conversations that we're having with other people. And then I think back to what Lasse has been saying all year long, right? Partnership is the new leadership. Like this is also what that looks like in action, because we've kind of done this completely hard scrabble from the ground up, right? Thinking about what are the resources we have, what are the skills we have, what are the talents, and what are we willing to give for not just each other, but also for our listeners, the people that we hope to meet one day. But are we ever really going to meet? We can't know, but we're doing this in some small part for each other, but in some small part for the people who are out there as well, of saying, this is what it means like to create something. If you're thinking about starting an education innovation, you don't need to have everything right. What you need to have is a team of people and a good idea and the willingness to fail forward, to be afraid, to trust, and to do the hard things. And I think that that's a beautiful microcosm right there. Sorry, Hanneke, though, I did cut you off.
No, you didn't. I was just overeager as usual. Anyone's ever listened to this this podcast? Wow, Freudian slip, because my voice notes that I send people are as long as podcasts. That's why I called it a voice note. Literally,
Hey,
guys.
I've never got one.
Well, it's coming, babes. Which segues so perfectly into, no, I didn't. I interrupted you because I'm always so eager to just buzz with all the things I want to share. But I want to remind our listeners, if you're still with us, this deep into this beautiful reflection, is that the five of us are sitting in 5 different corners of the world. We said in the beginning, but we're in 5 different corners of the world, and all of us are here voluntarily. And I'm not saying that to voluntarily to tap us on the back and say we're wonderful, but who would have thunk? Who would have thought that this is possible? Like that 5 people with schedules and lives and things would be dedicated enough to a cause and an idea on all different timelines to make it happen. And shout out here to Lindsay, who right now is at 4, 5 a.m.
Yeah, but
I
that's
mean,
only
it's
because
just,
yeah, we won't get into why.
it's just miracle. It really is. And I think that often again, people will at the start of something think of all the reasons why it couldn't work. We're not together, so the quality won't be great. Is an online podcast even possible? Timelines and life, and we all have to like put food on the table and work hard, and look at us. So I think that's part of the magic, is that there's the common willingness to offer this time, this perspective,
But
and something
it's
personal.
also, yeah, I'm interrupting you now because you taught me that. It's also the very fact that there are 5 of us, that this could continue, and we supported one another and obviously adapted and stepped in. Can I also read that little quote that I shared the other day? It really feels in line, if that was true to all.
Absolutely.
Okay, because I think this is also what this space has become for me. This is a quote by Scott Barry Kaufman. He's a researcher and has researched lots of things, one of which is creativity, but I will just share this. We gift. Intellectual loneliness isn't about wanting deep talks. It's about realizing how few people can tolerate complexity. It's noticing how quickly people rush to have an answer, not to understand, but to feel right. It's watching people form entire worldviews of headlines, vibes, and whatever reels told them last. It's the silence that follows when you say something that doesn't fit neatly into someone's script. It's not arrogance, it's exhaustion from always having to code switch between what you actually think and what's safe to say around people who shut down at nuance. And no one warns you. Once your brain learns to stretch, small talk doesn't just bore you, it alienates you. You're not looking for smart people, you're looking for people who are still thinking. And you guys have continued to help me keep thinking. The number of times I've texted madly Alex, I'm like, oh, can I redo that? I just had a deeper, I wish I'd said it differently. But what that's doing in the setting is exactly what you were saying, is sort of spark the curiosity for both ourselves and others. And that's really stretched me as a thinker and in my life in lots of ways. So it's my hope that people are listening and they're like, that doesn't quite sit right with me. And then they take it further. That's what these spaces should do. There's nothing truth about what we're saying here. It's all about extending thought. So that's what I have loved about this space and hope that stays that way. They're just thoughts. They're just passing thoughts we're putting out into the world.
Well, and I think
Go ahead.
yeah. No, I wanted to say that I hope people listening can hear that we all bring a different perspective. And Lindsay is so great at her research and quotes, and all of us bring something different. But at the end of the day, we crave real connection and real conversations. And in this world that is very fragmented, hopefully show that there's stuff that binds us together. And although we're so different and in different places of the world, and the innovators that we talk to are so different from us and live in different places, there's something that binds us. And I think that's really important to remember. And that's one of my biggest reflections. Look at how different we are. People are working in tech, in education, social emotional learning, creativity, but we're all connected in a way. So I hope that's a really inspiring message for the world, that there is connection and real conversation happening in these days.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that and ask you all, what are some of the moments throughout the past year that have changed how you all understand either what education looks like or education and innovation? Have there been any conversations in particular that stood out to you for that?
It's so many. How can you pick? Goodness. Yeah, it is interesting, Sherelle, that our perspectives are such. So, we're drawn to what we're kind of deeply in. And for me, yeah, gosh, maybe even the first series conversation was so powerful. How she grounded the mother-child connection, how we talked about, I think it's fascinating reflecting now that she was our first guest. And that really set the tone, I think, for following episodes. But that was one that sat with me for a long time. And actually, I listened to a number of times. I really needed her words at that point in my life. So hey, thank you, Siri.
I wanted to share the word passion, because from each conversation that I got, and there were founders, but there were also larger organizations where we interviewed. I think it was the Norwegian Refugee Council and a team of people actually that have worked there for 20 years and 5 years, but they were also passionate and dedicated. That I thought that everybody just has a passion for education. And it comes through it's a small innovation in northern Canada, or it's a multi-year $1 million program across countries. There's huge passion, and you can feel it in each conversation. So that was something that I took away from these conversations, how inspiring and how passionate and dedicated people are to make education better for everyone in this world.
Yeah, exactly what you were all saying here. It's so hard to choose because we've had so many wonderful people. But when I think about it, myself as an educational innovator coming to Helsinki for the first time, meeting all these innovators, and then feeling a little bit overwhelmed of everything that educational innovation is. Because when you're an innovator yourself, you're often in this tunnel. And you're like, okay, this is educational innovation for me, to me. And then when you learn about like, oh my goodness, your eyes are literally opening wide towards everything there is and everything that can be. And even though it's all so different, we're all doing different things. I've learned about like systems now and about boards and fellowships and whatever. I had no idea, absolutely no idea. And I also felt a little bit nervous interviewing people about things that I have no idea about. Just showing my curiosity was luckily enough. But that has brought the podcast to me, starting with the summit first in Helsinki, and then this learning and learning about all the different things that educational innovation is, can be, will be. And what you're saying, Sherelle, that is like the passion that connects us, but where it all goes to, and like the passion is like where it all sprouts from, where it all blooms from, and seeing that huge garden with amazing flowers and trees and plants blooming in their own different ways, and admiring that from our own perspective, but then learning about their perspectives. Like, yeah, to me, that has been, I can't give like all these specific examples, but that's like the overall feeling, what it has brought to me, like this huge garden that is in bloom and will continue to bloom because we respect each other so much, because we are curious about, I want to see you bloom. Tell me all about it. Where did you start to grow? Where did it come from? Because we have so much admiration for each other. And I think that's beautiful.
What you're describing makes me think of the image that at the 100 conference at the end of 2024, where we all met one another, we had all drawn a little picture, do you recall? And then they used AI to make a postcard, which is somewhere very close to hand, right here by me, to kind of draw a picture of what our collective vision and dream for education in the future would be. From that, we as a group have always asked our guests at the end of most episodes what their dream for education is. And when you paint that picture, I almost saw that same, a beautiful garden landscape of an ongoing growing thing. So it's beautiful how it all comes back together. And it makes me think when I listen to all of you, what, kind of sticks with us, or a memory that stands out, what we really enjoyed. It's also very difficult. Like, they were all so amazing. I can't really choose one. Like, every single one felt super authentic. But I will share with our listeners that in our preps and our private chats, I often say to my friends here in the part of the co-hosts and committee that it's kind of therapeutic for me personally, these episodes. And I've been thinking a lot about why it's therapeutic for me. And I think it's because of exactly that quote that you read, because of the stimulation of a part of me that I really need. And I think working as I do in creative education at the tip of Africa, I can sometimes feel very like alone. And I think the therapeutic value of then speaking to people like Nakia from Scenario, for instance, and many others, like you, Sherelle, and like you, Lindsay, very similar in ways what we do, our organizations, you just instantly feel not alone. Now, a more juvenile version of me or younger version of me might have felt threatened, but like, oh my word, look at what Nakia's getting right and I'm not. And sometimes that voice is there. I can't deny that shadow self of me is also in these calls. But what has happened over time, both with me growing and just being in these calls and in these interviews, is that look at who's there on the other side of the world, also trying to do similar things like you, Hanneke. Mirror, 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 mirror. And it's like this beautiful sort of Morse code across the world of like, keep going. And one of the biggest things that often comes out of my questions is like, how the hell are you funding it? Tell me how you're funding it. And then to hear that there is kind of a momentum shift in terms of government and stakeholders, or that, yes, we've been managing to get funding from this institution for X amount of time. Instead of feeling jealous and worried, I take so much heart from that. And that in itself has been therapeutic. Both us as a little group working with our guests, but also the guests and their stories, and specifically people like Nakia and the creative work with kids. So it's been very beautiful.
The other thing I want to offer, and it's beautiful to hear you all talk in this manner, is that everyone who's come to the podcast, this is obvious, but let's just state it. And I think what 100 does so beautifully is elevate and center kids. So there's never a question of where the heart of our conversation is going to be. Every one of us showing up is centering children. And that immediately puts us into this place of curiosity and empathy and, and drive, right? So we all bring that, and every podcast I walk away with that feeling of like the people around the globe who are working so hard for the children. And that's a really, I go into my day and I'm like, just, a little bit, a head taller or whatever it is, thanks to knowing that we're all doing this work. Yeah, it's important to share these stories. And then it gets back to storytelling, doesn't it? And that we all have important stories to tell. And that's part of our humanity. That's part of us being able to keep going on hard days. So I hope that does encourage people to say, yeah, they're doing it, so I can do it as well.
And I think that's really the heart of it for me, right? The two parts of what you've just said, Lindsay, link, here I am again. But thinking about this, because we never have a question of what are we doing here? What is the purpose of these conversations? The purpose is to improve education. We want every child to flourish, right? And for me, what I have learned is how inextricable that passion is with that storytelling, with those operational sides of it. And what makes the 100 collection, what makes our community different, is the fact that we're always trying to weave these threads together. And so this podcast is such a beautiful place for us to enact that, for us to enable it, to embody those different parts coming together. And what that means also is that when, Hanneke, you're trying to find the mirror there, you know what the axis of reflection is. It's about centering children. When you're looking at that garden, you understand what the base of that soil is. When we are trying to find that fire, we know what that fire is built around. And that makes it so much easier, not just for us to have these conversations, but I think also one of the things that we have reflected on over and over again, and that we've heard from our guests as well, is that they feel welcome when they come here. And it's because we have been able to cultivate such a space that the boundaries are clear, what we are doing is certain, and the way that we talk about it is kind of that thing that fuels everything that the 100 community is trying to do, which is this warmth, this empathy, this clear-eyed, not blind optimism, but certainty that we can make a difference if we're trying and seeding the world with these good ideas from all across it. I want to know if hosting these conversations, I would let me try that whole word again.
Come on, Alice, give us a voice. We did say we wanted to light
Hello,
one up.
puppets. I want to know.
Crew. I mean, not going to sing together, but let's hear it.
What are some of these ways in which hosting these conversations has changed how you listen, even in your everyday life, right? What is something that about this has changed who you are when you're not sitting behind these podcast screens? I think, Hanneke, you already talked about that a little bit, but
I steal Hanneke's I'm from Mars. Wait, I'm not from Mars. Yes, I'm from Mars. Something.
You're gonna need to pay me royalties for that.
And it makes the kids laugh every time. So
That's a good one.
Can I go first?
Yeah.
What really changed for me, and that is, it's like finding that key to a really good conversation. And that is, to me, to hear the why. I really love hearing the why. And that's not just Simon Sinek, right? It's not just from his book, but it's really where it comes from. Take us back into time, what we do in the podcast. Like, please tell us. We want to hear that story. We love stories, and not just what you do, right? Because we know we can read that on a website, what you do, but often the heart of the story. That's what we crave. We want to hear that. Those are the stories that make us want to listen to the podcast longer because it's personal. It has blood, sweat, and tears in it. And we like listening to that. And that is what changed for me too in other conversations that I have with other people, with colleagues. When I met people here at a university in Stavanger where I have a wonderful collaboration with, I start with that why. I start with like, I would love to hear what happened. What made you be so interested and curious about education? What brought you here? I go back in time. So that time machine that we have used in the podcast, I love using that time machine with colleagues, with people that I might work together with children, with anybody, everybody. So that is something that has really changed for me to put a bigger focus on the why. Really love that.
I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you've ever done like a coaching profile, but I'm very red energy. So you have like blue, which is very detail oriented. Yellow is very like out there. Green is, togetherness, and red is just go. And I'm extremely red energy. It's just like, okay, I hear something and I go. And through these conversations, and in many conversations, I think we recognize this. We have conversations, there's an objective. It's like, oh, I'm showing off how smart I am, or there's something that needs to be done coming from this conversation. And there's not many conversations that I have where I'm like, no, sit back, center the other, because it's their time to shine, and you don't need to do anything. You don't need to like show yourself. You don't need to shine in a way. And these conversations have actually taught me to step back, really, really listen, because there's no objective for me in the conversation. I'm just like a bystander that really wants the other to like shine and bring the best story of themselves forward. And it shifted, I think, my understanding what it means to be a bit less red and reactive and be a little bit more green, to be like, no, we're in this together and I want you to share your story. And there's there's nothing in it for me in a way, if that makes sense. So I learned a lot to just centering the other, take a step back and really learn how to listen, because I don't think we often do that anymore for each other. It's like, there's no objective. We're just listening and we're just asking questions, and there doesn't have to be a larger objective here for your
No,
ego.
you do that.
So, yeah.
You do that like so well. I think it's so interesting to hear you say you're red. Not that you aren't. I know that about you. You are such a go human. And on the podcast, you're the one that's like taking it all in, and then quietly, and then suddenly you're like, boom. And you bring it all together for us. So I find that fascinating, because I always find our energies are like, I don't know, but I see you as that holding the space for it to come forward and then seeing it so clearly.
Well, maybe
But what
that's
you
why
just
there's
said-
this reflection, because I never realized it until now talking about it, actually.
But what you've just said, Sherelle, just feels like me, like so much. I agree with Lindsay. I would have almost said, really? And you described it, and I'm like, you're describing me. I find it easy to just talk, and this has taught me to listen more. And it's important to listen. And now that you've said it, I want to know everyone's color profiles and your Enneagram and your star sign and your Myers-Briggs. These things are so fascinating. But on my, I don't know, some of our listeners will know Myers-Briggs, the introvert, extrovert, Jungian spectrum, but I can only relate to that I'm quite a big E. And in
You
my
are
life,
not.
such an introvert, shy as a mouse.
Never actually gotten you to talk before. This is the first time.
But the idea of that is also the spectrum, is that you move your if you've got a big I, you try to move it through your life to the E. And in this podcast, believe it or not, I also often go, just listen. And I think you're right, Sherelle. The modern world, I just think that there's not a lot of spaces for it. Like, people's attention spans are really little. And when we do get together, there's this insecurity that drives so many of us just in the modern world of like being relevant and being seen. But again, I think that's the strength of our collective that allows us to go, I am safe. Or when we say something that we go, oh gosh, what did I just say? I don't actually lose a lot of sleep over it. I think if I didn't feel the way I do about you guys, I would be like rolling around going, oh my God, what did I say? They must think I'm so, not smart or whatever. But I think it's what this group gives one another, that I go, I'm doing my best. They trust me. They've got me. I can fall if I need to.
We've also learned, I think, we've built that culture together, and it has been step by step and episode by episode. And as much as we had that connection to begin with, we had to learn how to listen to one another. I think we're still learning. We will always have that but we've given each other permission, like you said, to just sort of figure it out step by step. Yeah, it's really, really interesting. We'll be writing a research paper about the process behind the process behind the process.
With our
I'm down.
upcoming Dr. Stewart incoming. Yes.
They're doing this one together, guys.
I think that for me, I think that has to be something, what Sherelle has said, that for all of us, maybe it's taught us all to listen in a way that we don't know before. And I come from a very loud, boisterous family. I am a loud and boisterous person often myself. And I know so often that I have a reputation amongst my friends, I think the same as you do, Hanukkah, of being like the one who loves to talk. But I've always thought of myself as much more as a person who would rather listen than talk. So for me, it's been a really wonderful space to come together and think about this, because I've noticed when I'm in here, and already twice on this call I've done it, where like when I'm in this kind of listening thing, I'm not listening for no reason. Instead, I'm always hearing the threads and I'm trying to bind them together. That's what I find that I love out of this. And I've taken it out into my conversations in the real world, because I find that being able to do that kind of connection makes the conversation so much richer, of always trying to understand what parts of me reflect in here, and if nothing is resonating, what does that say about me and my experiences that I need to grow? Where do I need to push myself so that I can try to understand what you're telling me? And I wonder, for our listeners too, what has listening to these stories done for you? I don't know where to go with that. I need a little bit of a bailout here. I'm gonna
Survey's coming.
Survey is coming. Jamie, please make a survey.
I'm reminded too about, again, sometimes so often we think we do have to show up one way. And I think what has happened here is that richness of being able to be, a whole variety of things depending on the day, and that's so important also within the context of education. So often we think we have to be just, but we need to move between being an observer to actively playing with the kids, to then stepping back again, to having the conversation at a higher level with stakeholders. And so that flexibility sort of comes to the table because we're all practicing it. But I really want to honor that and say that that's an incredible skill. And it's not code switching. It's responding, it's listening. It's really a heightened awareness of the people around you. And I know that I know that the Pod Squad, that's not who we are, but that's another thing. I know that we together do that really well, but I've also found just each innovator coming is like, showing me a new way to show up. And that's a really beautiful thing, where it's just expanding my capacity as an educator.
I was just thinking about that, about the different roles that you can take in a conversation, right? And I think that is what I always do is I ask myself that question, how important am I actually? So my ego
Wait, did you write a book about this?
Yes. It's still in progress. But it is something that is a big question that helps me to understand my role in a conversation with a child, in a classroom, or with a colleague, or with the people that we interview. Because we are all so passionate and we all have gazillion things that we think about or connection that we make, that when somebody talks, when somebody says something about that we also care for deeply. And we're like, I just had the same thing. Oh. And all this energy comes out when we hear that, right? Am I right? And that is okay, how important am I actually? What is going to happen if I add this to the conversation, or if I hold back and just listen? Is it going to add something to the conversation, or am I going to make this about me? And it's not about me right now. What is my role? And I think that is something like a dance, right? Sometimes you take the lead and then you let the other person lead. And that is in education, same thing. Like, When are you going to teach something to a child? Take the lead in that. Or when will you let the child teach you and you will go with that flow? So I think that is like a dance also in these podcasts, right? We observe to see what role we need to take. And
Mm.
I think those are life lessons, not just podcast lessons, but lessons in life.
The way you're describing it, I can literally see like the steps of a cha-cha. Like even with your hands, it's so beautiful. I think like we've got two ends of the spectrum of our characters and personalities. Lindsay and I will shoot with what we've got to say instantly. You and Alex, I would say, are more on the very like hold and make space side. Sherelle somewhere in the middle. Would you guys agree with how I describe us? Or is that like
Not at all.
not at
Okay.
all? But what I want to say I wanted to say in defense as well of the, not defense, but, you know, of the more extroverted ones, I often, when there's any kind of silence, I listen to my heart and I go, like you say, where's this coming from? And often I speak from a place of offering, like I want to offer, like I want to build a bridge for the next thing, you know? And I think sometimes when we are very like, it can, and then the extrovert, I think we live in a world where the more introverted or the more reflective types in the world, we might be told, oh no, we've got to speak more. And the ones of us that speak a lot, listen more. What I'm trying to say is, I think it's always a journey towards the middle and the balancing. I don't know, maybe we should cut all that out. I just feel like I've just like waffled and I feel very unsafe suddenly. Leave it all.
We all need to get out of our chairs for a minute
Just
and do that.
leave it all. Too vulnerable, vulnerability.
You had something. You were on it.
Yeah.
I had something and then I didn't trust myself. Then I felt a little bit silly.
Well, thank you for modeling Selena's.
I want to bring us back down to the ground a little bit and
Why would you want
honoring everything that has been said, including the silliness and going out on limbs and knowing that sometimes, you know, when we are starting the recording for this, I always say to our guests, if you find yourself walking down a road with your words and you're not happy with where that is, that's not a problem, right? You can always take care of that later, because life is about second chances, and it turns out podcasting is too. But I want to also ask you all, as we are reflecting back on 25 episodes that we have recorded, what are some of the challenges that you've heard from, you know, over and over again, whether explicitly or kind of lying underneath the surface of the innovators as they come here and they share their stories? We've now talked to so many of them. So what are some of these challenges that we haven't yet been able to figure out and that hopefully we can keep thinking about in this kind of space?
It's very, I don't know what I'm actually trying to say, but the word scale came to mind because we talk to so many innovators and I think there's such great ideas out there and they're reaching a lot of kids. But I do feel like sometimes the landscape on a government level or on a higher level is not shifting as fast. And sometimes I see the crux of things. It's like, oh, you have really great people on the ground doing the work and doing the innovation and such great heart. But then the actual systems are not changing and we're not reaching every child. But there are enough people with passion and dedication that are doing the work. So I feel left very inspired. But if you really take a look at education in a larger lens, it's not always doing so great, right? And we have to be honest in that there are people doing wonderful things and we're able to give a platform and highlight that, but things are also not going really well at some point. So I just think, yeah, how can we just make sure that all of this great energy reaches all the kids in the world? And I feel like it's a struggle to change really the system and the thinking.
Just to quickly add to that point, Sherelle, I often think when I speak to similar companies, I'm like, we should just all do this together. Couldn't we just, like, everyone in the same vein, just all go to the people who are in charge of the money and the universe, and they can give us a pot and we can do so much better together. So sometimes what frustrates me is I'm like, oh, there's so much good, and maybe if we found ways of collaborating. And you said something like that in the beginning, Alex. collaboration is the future, or you said working together. What was the term?
Partnership is leadership.
That's
Partnerships, leadership.
to our
Thank
marching
you.
order this year. That's right.
But I mean, again, a more juvenile, younger version of my entrepreneurship would have gone, I want to be the only one who can do X, Y, Z. And now I'm just like, please, let's find a way of doing this together. There's so many people that could actually do stronger together.
Maybe we are doing that. And, that's, I think, what 100 highlights is that each community, what I love about it, what I love about 100 is when an innovation is resonating with me, it's that they have deeply known who and why they're doing the work that they're doing. And then they've created from that place something so authentic. And so that's where I keep coming back to, can it ever really be scaled? If we all do local and we all really hone in on what's necessary right in front of us, then that's the work that really does need to happen. And of course we want it at scale. Of course we want change for everyone, but isn't the very point that has to be true to the culture, to the people? And you have to start from that place. You have to start close as
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, right? One of the fundamental tensions that lies at the heart of the 100 project is that we talk about impact and scale, but scale has so many different dimensions to it. We talk about scaling up and scaling out and scaling down. And each of those is a different thing. But Lindsay, I have to agree that the innovations that speak to me the most are the ones that aren't necessarily trying to hit, 100 million kids. They're the ones that are trying to change how this community is understanding itself in a way that is going to make it easier for maybe that idea to propagate to a new place in a way where it can be really understood. And so when we're talking about scaling, for me, so often it's, how can this be done sustainably? And sometimes there's ways for government partnerships and for large scale media companies and understanding how this can really have a huge impact on a lot of people. But then you look at organizations that are really just focused on, we have 3 communities here that we want to make a difference in. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is how big does an innovation need to be for it to be considered part of the global collection? Our limit's pretty small actually, and you don't need to have been around for that long for it to really have started to make a difference. And so, Cheryl, I'm glad you said that. Hanneke, I'm glad you said that. And Annette, as somebody who has an innovation that is quite small, right? Like the Flow approach and the Flow School and Flow Start are all working with really focused groups, but you're trying to change something at a community level, at a foundational level. And I always found that those are the ones that, when these stories are told, those are the ones that bring me to tears more than anything else. Those are the ones that leave me changed too.
I was actually just looking at numbers lately. And then I did feel really small. I was like, oh my goodness, people have like made an impact on millions and like whatever numbers I saw. And I was like, oh yeah, 1,200 people. Like, but that's still so many. It's still a lot. And I need to be aware of that too. And even if it's just 20, even if it needs to start somewhere. If you think about what you just said, the sustainable change that we want to make, right? Because of course I understand, like if you make an app and it reaches so many people, then the numbers add up really quickly, which is fun, which is cool if it reaches so many people. But we are not sure, like, what kind of change will that make into the lives of people? And maybe if you're more on it and you can see the people that part of that educational innovation, I don't know if that will make a bigger impact, or at least you can have like a little bit more of control over what's happening. And what I wanted to say about the challenge that I've been noticing, not just in my educational innovation Flow Start, is how to scale it, not on a like a worldwide or maybe like millions scaling kind of way, but really just with one person that you meet and that you want to convince that this is the way. This is fantastic. Because like when you have such an amazing idea, how do you bring it to the next person? Because you have like an energy level, an enthusiasm level of 1000, but then the other person might not even want to listen to that. So I think here is the readiness based approach, like feel where that other person is a really interesting challenge to find out, right? If you want to scale your educational innovation, like how do you do that? I think that's a really interesting challenge to be learning about, and to find out, is that person ready even to listen to my story, or am I just blurting it out? And yeah, how do you make people start using it? And then that approach of thinking, I'm not sure who the person is who has like who came up with that, but it's about having these early adapters. So because you want to reach a big group and you want everybody to be in, but that's like kind of impossible. You just need a couple of early adapters. Does anybody know, Lindsay? Do you know the name of the person?
Remember.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
I know the concept of the early
Yeah.
adopters.
But if you find like some early adapters and with them to have them on board, then you can spread the good vibes of the. Did you find it, Alex?
I should really, of course, I was just like racking my brain. It's Rogers curve. We talk about it all the time in 100. It's really foundational to what we do. Yes.
Right? If you find those early adapters and with them, then it will spread and spread and spread and spread. So it's really spreading those seeds instead of like giving them the bouquet of flowers. Take it. So that is really interesting if you think about challenges that we all have to face, that how to spread the passion.
Can I just say, it's reminding me too, I'm reading Elizabeth Gilbert's new book and it's just beautiful. And there was a line in it, she talks about urgency or agency over urgency. And I think I just loved how the words came together. And it was really clear to me that the work that we do is urgent work. There's an immediate need. And the role that we have as educators is always agency. So how do you move out of that place, which we know our neurobiology is just like running and we just like want to solve the problem, and there needs to be pause in order to get to agency. And there needs to be regulation for you and the child, like all the pieces that go in to how do you get from urgency to agency. And that's this beautiful collection also that Hundreds offered, is it this way? Is it this way? Am I on the right path? What is my path? And how do we instill that in one another and in our children? And there's something in what you were saying, Annette, that reminded me of that phrase. And I think that it's incredibly important, never more important in this time where globally we're working out of that place daily, trying to address urgent matters, big urgent matters.
And if you want to make the change sustainable, it needs to have that agency.
Mhm.
It needs to come from within, so that intrinsic motivation.
Right.
If you want people
Well,
on
you do
board,
that.
they need
You
to feel
offer that. Even the framework that you've created in Flow is exactly that. It's an offering of like, where will you enter?
Yeah. Wow, so much to think about. Thank you for that. Love that.
Beautiful.
My friends, it's time for one big question, but I'm going to make it a little bit different
Oh,
from before. So, as you all know, we'd like to end our episodes by asking our guests what their dreams are for the future of education. But we've answered that question already. And so I want to know, how has this podcast changed your dream for education? And what might you like to see it do in the future?
There is always a way, one way or another. There is always a way. It will be my new mantra.
I think mine is just keep going and stay curious.
Mine, I guess, is you're not alone. It's not. There's a tribe. You're part of it. Hold hands.
I think for me, what has changed thinking about the future of education is that education, it's even more important than I thought it was before. I thought it was important, but now it's like, no, all bets, all the chips in one bucket, and it's education.
And I think for me, it has to be more than ever that more connected we are, the more we can change things in the future. The more education nuts we have in this beautiful salad mix, the further it's going to go. What a weird way to end this. Thank you all for listening. We will catch you on the next episodes of the 100 Connected podcast. Thank you all.
Thanks, friends.
Thank you.